You've lived a great life and done well for yourself. But what mark will you leave on the world? How will you inspire future generations? Stan Miller and Katie Beth Hand have helped thousands of people answer exactly those questions. If you've ever wondered, what will be my legacy? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Your Life, Your Legacy podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Stan and Katie Beth.
Welcome back to the Your Life, Your Legacy podcast with your hosts, Stan Miller and Katie Beth Hand. Our guest today is entrepreneur and Senior Vice President and Director of Growth at Sharebite, Adam Landsman. Adam, thank you so much for joining us. We are really excited to have you with us today.
Thank you very much. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. So before we dive right in and ask you all of our questions, I was hoping you could talk to our listeners a little bit about your background and then talk to us a little bit about Sharebite and tell us what it is, what the mission is, what you guys do.
Sure. I live in New York City. I've been in technology and sales leadership roles for my entire career. I currently work at a company called Sharebite, which is the leading meal benefits provider in the United States. We connect companies and their employees with local restaurants and caterers. So anytime a company is looking to improve employee engagement, culture, productivity through the use of food, we're one of the providers that helps them get that done. And every order that is placed through our platform, we make a donation to a local food bank. Through City Harvest or Feeding America, our partners to help solve food insecurity.
That's awesome. Talk to us a little bit, for our listeners who may not know, tell us a little bit about the food insecurity issue that's going on here in the States. I think it's probably more prominent than most people realize.
I would agree with you. It is definitely more prominent than most people realize. I think some of the latest stats over the last year or two, roughly 13% of US households are considered food insecure. That's nearly 44 million people. And there are a lot of people that don't look like they're food insecure, or they may not work at companies and earn salaries that you might presume that they or their families are food insecure. But those are real stats, and that is really happening. And so just because someone might have what you seem as a high-paying job, you do not know what they have going on at home. You do not know whose bills they're paying or what other expenses they have. And food is certainly a bigger concern that doesn't get nearly the attention that we think it deserves.
Absolutely. I would agree with that. And I know that those numbers are significantly higher, even this far out from COVID, that a lot of those numbers really skyrocketed back in that time. So we're thankful that your company is there doing that. Talk to us a little bit of kind of from maybe from the company aspect or from the employee aspect. Exactly how does Sharebite work? Is it delivering food to the office? Is it delivering food to employees at their homes so that they can all enjoy it together? What does Sharebite look like?
Sure. So we specifically focus on the corporate entity. So our customers are companies of all shapes and sizes, and quite frankly, anywhere in the country for the most part. We have products that are designed specifically to handle food that can be delivered to the office. Certainly after the pandemic, there are a number of companies that are focused on their return to office. They want to get people back collaborating together in person. And so they want the food delivered specifically to the office, and that's where they're going to pay for it essentially. But then there are many other companies that have hybrid and remote workforces, Sharebite included. We are a fully remote company, and that doesn't matter. We still want to provide food as a employee benefit. And so we also have products that enable food to be ordered and delivered wherever that employee lives, anywhere in the country and soon to be outside of the country as well.
That is really cool. Stan, I'm just saying from a personal aspect, maybe for Friday team trainings, we could get some Sharebite food delivered. I'm just throwing that out there as an option for our team. No, yeah. I think that's a really cool mission. Food is one thing that always brings people together, right? And so kind of no matter how, if you're working remote or having it delivered to the office, I love that you're giving people the opportunity to really do that and participate in that. I know I've taken all the questions. Stan, I will hush and give you a moment to ask a few. I know you have many.
So, this whole hunger thing really intrigues me. I mean, the need for food is one of those universal commonalities that unites us, regardless of skin color, race, religion, any of those things. I mean, we all, come together with the need to eat a few times a day. And I've continued to be mystified at how first world countries, like the richest country in the world, like this one, ours, why is it that we have people who are hungry? I mean, I've asked myself, I don't know the number, but I'm really curious. How much would it cost to make sure nobody ever went hungry? Is there a number for that?
It's a great question. I don't know the number. It's probably a very large number, but you point to something that I think is really interesting. And let's just talk about this country. We got a lot of people in this country. We have a lot of companies, and there's a lot of companies that have plenty of money to do all sorts of things. And one of the things that we don't think, and I know we're biased in this sentiment, but that we don't think they do enough of is focus on helping get their workers fed, right? Our vision is to get every worker in America fed. And we want to be the organization that helps power that because we built the right technology. But the point there is, if you want to get everyone fed, you can easily start with companies that feed their employees. And while they do that, the donations that go through Sharebite to these local communities are going to feed other people. And look, this is a big number. It's a big problem, and it's going to take more than just companies, public sector, private sector. What is the government willing to do eventually? In many other countries outside the US, food vouchers is a national mandate. Workers or employers are required to provide meals for workers. That's not yet the case in the US, and we'd like to see if that's possible.
So it's ShareBite. Are you guys, I mean, you've thought a lot about this. I'm wondering, is there uh, evidence or at least anecdotal stories about how making sure people are fed has an impact on productivity or at least on collegiality? Because now you're creating the opportunity for people to be at the office and have lunch together, right?
Yes, definitively there is. And as I speak to you today, I'm currently in Las Vegas at a culture conference. It is 400 people that are focused on all of the ways that they can focus on employee engagement, attracting great talent, retaining top talent, increasing productivity, all those things. And one of the things that is talked about very frequently, which is why I'm obviously here, is the ability to use food to help do that. And so there are certainly a whole bunch of statistics that you can find online as to what food has done for certain companies. But let's just go back to something that you mentioned before, the concept of everyone needs to eat, of course, right? But in addition, just think of the name, share bite, sharing a bite, breaking bread. This is an age-old concept of when is it a good time to hang out and chit chat with people and certainly your coworkers? Probably over a meal. We certainly think so. And I've worked at many companies over the years that have provided a meal benefit, whether that's 5 days a week or even just a couple days a week. And regardless of what you're eating or what job you have, right? I'm in sales, someone else is in engineering. We can sit down at a table and hang out, get to know each other, collaborate a little bit because we're both spending a couple minutes eating that meal.
So, we've chatted just briefly, and one of the things that impressed me in the conversations we've had is that the mission dimension of what you do seems to be one of the motivations for your being involved with this company. Where did that come from?
That's right. Like I said, I've worked for a long time in early stage and growth tech companies, and I'm fascinated by always finding the better way to do something and not just being stuck with the old thing that works good enough. But there's more to life than just having a good job and making some money. I want to feel passionate about what I'm doing and who I'm helping. And so it was important to me when I chose to join Sharebite earlier this year that I wasn't working for a company that just had a cool product, but rather it had a cool product, but I felt passionate and confident every day that my hard work was going to pay dividends, maybe even long after I'm gone. And so I think that's important for a lot of people, and certainly it is for me.
So, I would think that in a business, there's a tension between we have to make money at this, right? I mean, you have to, uh, but also making these contributions that requires revenue, right? So, how do you balance in the company? How do you balance the need to be profitable and keep the investors happy, and at the same time make these charitable contributions?
Carefully.
Yeah.
Uh, Jokes aside, look, we would have a lot more money if we didn't donate some of it every year. And in fact, we've just now surpassed 10 million meals that we've donated to local food organizations since our inception a number of years ago. We would have necessarily loved to have that money on the balance sheet, but not really, right? Because that doesn't further the overall mission. And I personally think that being able to balance that and do both is really what clients are looking for. There are definitively many clients that have chosen to use our solution over other similar ones because they care about ESG, they care about doing good. They want their employees are demanding that their company does good. And so we are both a sort of a vendor, but also a partner that helps fill multiple goals of theirs.
So what an interesting idea. It's in what you're saying is that the fact that you're doing this charitable thing actually is the differentiator that makes your business more successful.
That's correct. It is absolutely one of the differentiators that separates us from all the other companies in the space.
So isn't it amazing that when you think about all the people and all the people out there in the world, when you see the behavior patterns that drive decisions like this, like the decision to call you guys to deliver food to the office, that that built in, I believe that built into the DNA material of humans is this innate need to make a positive difference in the world. And I think it's really cool that what you guys have done, you've developed a business model that connects with that around probably the most elemental aspect of being human, right? The need to have food, right? So there's a real takeaway for our listeners in this. And it's this idea that doing good, doing charitable things, making a positive difference by giving is not necessarily a subtraction from profitability. In fact, it may be an enhancement to profitability.
That's absolutely right. And look, we're not the first company to think this way, right? There's other examples that I'm sure people are familiar with. Warby Parker, Tom Shoes, donates a pair of shoes. Sock companies donate socks for a pair of socks, Bombas. And even I know you have a lot of your listeners are lawyers and such. There's also or financial planners. There's all sorts of folks that do pro bono work, right? They don't do it all day every day because they do need to pay the bills, but oftentimes there are folks that care about helping out the person who is in need and may not have the money. And so I do think that it's encouraging that there's more people having this mindset and doing those things in their line of work. And that's certainly the way we think about our business.
So, I think I shared with you before we started the recording today is that one of the real core mission of this podcast actually is the hope that people who are listening to this podcast will hear guys like you talking about what you're doing and the kind of impact that you're making, and hopefully have that moment in time when it occurs to them that, gosh, they're doing some pretty amazing things. What could I do? What could I do to make a difference, to make an impact? And so your story is really an inspiration. And I hope the people listening to this podcast today will allow themselves to be inspired by the possibilities of what you're saying. And I think it's particularly engaging to me to really get my head around the idea that the fact that you're doing charitable things is not a subtraction, but it's rather a profitable addition to the business model. People are choosing to use your service over others precisely because you're doing this. And so it turns out that doing good is good for business.
Yeah, and I'll tell you one other thing. Also, think about the employees that work for Sharebite or any company that has a charitable component. Their hard work that they put in every day doesn't only benefit the leadership or the investors or the board or shareholders if you're a publicly traded company. It helps beyond that. And so we also feel grateful that the people who come to work every day for Sharebite are probably putting in maybe even a little bit more effort because they know there's something bigger than just us and the people that work at the company and are involved with the company. And quite frankly, I think lots of organizations would benefit from ensuring that their employees were putting in the absolute most or best that they could because there's this other really, positive benefit of doing that work.
Oh, cool. I'm guessing morale's pretty high around your place.
We do think morale is pretty high. We survey folks. We actually just surveyed recently, and we're a lean organization, just under 100 people, but they are great people. They're passionate about what we do. They're passionate about helping our clients and also passionate about the mission. So yeah, I think we're pretty happy.
It's interesting because in just the last few years, and you probably know about this, Adam, since you're part of this revolution, but in the past few years, there have been a ton of studies done on the fact that people, kind of millennials and younger, have this need, this drive. I think they're calling it the purpose-driven workforce, that they're willing to actually take less money in their career if they have some of these benefits, like being able doing a job like working through Sharebite where they can actually help others. And so it's very interesting that Sharebite is one of these sort of new and definitely up and coming companies like Tom's and Bomba's and a lot of these that you've mentioned that are out there being profitable and making money for employees, but also really doing a lot of good for the world. I think that's a very positive trend. It's a very exciting trend. We read all the bad news every day, right? We're all still recovering from election news and all of these different things that have happened. And yet there's a lot of really cool stuff like Sharebite that's out there just doing really, really positive things on a day-to-day basis. And I don't know that there's a higher calling than being able to help feed someone, as Stan said, like the most basic thing that every human needs. So I love that you guys are part of that revolution. And I hope that revolution sort of continues as we move forward, certainly. Absolutely. But before, go ahead.
I was just going to say there was a term, I think people used to say work-life balance. And now I believe that term is changing. It's work-life integration, right? It's people, and you mentioned younger generations of people who, yes, they want to work, they need to work, but they also care deeply about the things and the issues that they're passionate about. And I think there is a greater desire in the younger generations these days to help improve the world, fix the world, whatever your sort of plight is. Ours is food and hunger. And so I think that's great that there's more people who have that passion on their mind, and that, yes, there are companies that will enable them to both have a job, get paid, pay the bills, but also try to make an impact on the world.
I love that. Okay, before we run out of time, I want to switch gears and talk about another cause, not directly related to the work that Sharebite does, but something that's important to you. And tell us a little bit about Remission, what that program is, and the work that you guys do through that program.
Yeah, so Remission Foundation is a charitable organization that some friends of mine and I founded 14 years ago. We decided that as we moved on in our careers and had a little bit of extra money, we wanted to do something good. We all felt that cancer is this terrible disease that there just doesn't seem to be an end in sight. And so we were going to raise some money every year and donate it to an organization that is focused on finding a cure to one form of cancer or not. Each year, fortunately, we didn't at the time have a specific type of cancer that had affected us so greatly that we said we're going to focus only on this one type. And so a little bit more unique to us. Every year, we nominate a different doctor or organization or beneficiary, and all of our fundraising and educational efforts for that year go to that organization, and then we do it all over the following year. So next year, 2025, will be our 15th year. We're closing in on $1 million total donated throughout those years to a variety of organizations, and we're trying to do our part to find a cure to any type of cancer.
That's fantastic. And, unfortunately, cancer is something that has touched so many people's lives. And as you mentioned, in a bunch of different various forms. So I love that you guys, I was going to ask if there was a background story, like someone you were close to or someone that you lost, but I love that you guys just picked a worthy cause and went for it. That's great.
Yeah, it actually started because we used to take off a day in the summer and play golf. And we said, let's kick in some extra money and we'll auction it off or raffle it off, and one of us will buy a new driver. And after a couple of years, everyone had new drivers, and we didn't need that anymore. We said we should really give this money away to those who need it more than we do, and that's really how it started.
That is a very cool story. So for our listeners, we hope that inspires you guys to realize that whether you are on the golf course or in the boardroom, there are very simple things that you can do to make the world a better place. And that story is great, Adam, because it's such a funny, such a simple background story, and yet it's made a huge impact for so many people. So I love that. I love that. Well, before we run out of any time, Stan, do you have any other questions for Adam?
No, I just want to say that, Adam, you inspire me, and I hope you inspire a lot of people listening to this, because there's so many ways that the world can be made better. And the point I guess I would want to make is that is that when you engage in the process of doing that, our own lives become better too. I think you know that, right? And hopefully I know you're experiencing it. I hope that your children see what you're doing and model that. And so, yeah, being a role model that inspires people is a pretty powerful thing. And hopefully we have listeners that are going to be inspired today.
That's the plan. Thanks so much. I appreciate you guys having me on today.
Absolutely. Well, for all of our listeners, we of course want to also thank you for joining us. This has been the Your Life, Your Legacy podcast with your hosts, Stan Miller and Katie Beth Hand. Our guest today was Adam Landsman, and to connect with Adam, you can find him on LinkedIn and find out more information on Sharebite at sharebite.com. You can also find out more about the Remission Foundation at remissionfoundation.org. And of course, we will link all of those for you in the show notes. Adam, thank you again so much for being on with us today.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Your Life, Your Legacy podcast with Stan Miller and Katie Beth Hand. If you enjoyed the show, please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. To find out more about Stan and Katie Beth, go to pinnaclelegacylaw.com. You can also find links in the show notes.